everyone, and thank you for joining us today on the first 2026 NBJ Live. That's crazy. I can't even believe it is the beginning of February. It feels both like it's been a long 2026, but also a quick one. It's one of those years and one of those time frames. But again, thank you all for joining us. My name is Erica Kraft, market research analyst for NBJ Nutrition Business Journal. And I'm joined with my colleague here, Susan Enfield, Senior Director on the content team with NBJ as well. And so super excited to have her. This is Susan's first NBJ Live with us. So thank you so much for joining us. Are you excited?
Yeah, couldn't be more excited.
Stoked, yes. So yes, today Susan and I are going to be talking about the unlocking the power of social commerce and TikTok's explosive growth. So something that we've been talking a lot here at NBJ is what's happening on TikTok. You know, some people are talking about it in the industry as well, and we really feel like this was one of the topics that we wanted to dive deep into early this year in 2026. It's an emerging channel, it's an emerging discovery platform, both for current supplement users and, attracting new consumers to this industry. And so we wanted to take a deep dive into, what are the products that are selling well on TikTok? What are the top brands? What are some of the categories that are, consuming a lot of sales? And so it was really interesting doing a lot of research in this report and to see, some of the activity that's going on there was great. We also so we have some traditional NBJ market sizing that we'll go over today that was featured in the report. Let me give you a nice visual here of what that report looks like. So yes, traditional NBJ market sizing, but we're also going to go over some consumer survey research that we did for the report as well. But then we're really just going to kick things off and kind of talk about what we mean when we say social commerce and how we defined it and how we decided to define it, talk about the opportunities and the growth, excuse me, as well as some of the challenges around understanding this channel and kind of all the things that encompass it. And before we get started, go ahead and if you have any questions throughout, go ahead to put your questions in the chat. We'll keep an eye on what's going on and we'll make sure to monitor it and get to it when we can. But we don't have to wait till the end for questions. So feel free to pop them in there when you can. All right, so I want to just go ahead and kick things off with this first slide. So there's a lot going on. So apologies if this feels very overstimulating to you, but I wanted to do something different and put like a screen grab of what I see when I search on my TikTok about supplements, right? So I pretty much searched what are the top supplements that are selling or something along those lines. And this is kind of what I got. And there's a lot of different types of content that's on here, right? There's lives, like you can see where that guy's selling Goli supplements and he's having people shop on the lives, but there's also content like that girl showing all the Lemmy gummies about what works best for her. There's also some maybe more negative type of content where supplements don't do what they say they do and they're not regulated by the FDA. So there's a lot of different types of content that's going on this channel, and it's really interesting to dive deep and see what types of content is also driving these purchases. But let's take a step back actually and kind of think about how NBJ decided to define social commerce. Susan, what are your thoughts on how we decided to define it, and was it easy?
It was not easy. I mean, of course, everyone is paying attention to social media as a driver to e-commerce sales, and that's the way we've always looked at it. But TikTok, beta tested its US shop in 2022, launched it officially in September 23. So
Mhm.
we just kept watching how the trends were coming out of social media and sales were being driven, and really thought maybe that there were valuable insights to be had by really taking a deep dive into this channel, whether it even was a channel. We had been tracking it as part of e-commerce. So we asked the question, what would it take is this the seventh channel? What would that take for it to be unique and stand on its own? And where we landed after much discussion was that it would have native checkout, that the consumer would go all the way through the journey from discovery to education to checkout and the whole process on the platform. So the only social platform that's doing that currently is TikTok. Meta did it in the past, but they retired their shop functionality in 2025. And it's a pretty seamless experience on Instagram or Facebook, other places, YouTube. Pinterest is a small player here, mostly discovery. Um, but those seamlessly redirect you, and the checkout and logistics delivery is handled by the vendor usually, or Shopify, whatever, what have you, general e-commerce. So, and the good thing about TikTok was that we really, from polling their data, were able to get very specific granular information about the brands and the revenue and the growth rates. So it was fun to look at that. So we're not suggesting this is the only place that the social commerce, more broadly defined, is the integration of e-commerce into a social media platform. And the way we're defining it for this report is TikTok, as reflective of other social media, with some unique characteristics for sure. It tends to be more viral and trend driven as a channel and have a lot of young people on it. So it's a very interesting channel. I learned a lot digging in.
Yeah, yeah, I think it's really interesting you were talking about the other social media platforms too, because when we were digging into the research for this, it was like, okay, well, what's actually happening where? And like you said, Meta was doing it, and then they sunsetted it in late 2025. While we were trying to figure all this out, we're like, wait, hold on, what what's happening here? But I think that's an interesting play and an interesting strategy on Meta's part because it's to me, in my opinion, it's almost like they want to just see how it goes with TikTok and just kind of let them play it out and maybe let them be the guinea pig.
Yeah, I think some of the experts we talked to said exactly that Meta and Google, et cetera, are playing a long game, and they would like to see what happens. Also, I think there's some concern about reputation. TikTok has had
Mm,
some reputation problems in the US, and I
interesting.
think some of the more legacy brands and influencers as well are, hesitant to go all in on TikTok. It's still early days.
For
Um,
sure.
yeah.
For sure. That's a great point. It's like it can excite some brands, I imagine, where they see that, there's a lot of sales happening on TikTok, almost 1 billion in 2025. And that's a pretty large adoption and growth rate from starting in late to mid 2023. I mean, that's a lot of sales that's happening on that
Yeah, I
platform
think
in supplements.
we saw that half the revenue was in 2025
Hmm.
alone since the beta launch. So yeah, it's definitely I mean at NBJ Summit last summer, New Chapter was on a panel. We had a TikTok panel with Mary Ruth, and as a new more emergent brand, and New Chapter, Blaine Streisand, the CEO, and the health and beauty lead at TikTok, which was really fascinating. But New Chapter, said it was a huge grower for them too, but that they weren't quite as agile as these new and emergent brands that really go all in and focus on TikTok, have dedicated teams, and really figure out their numbers, crunch the numbers and the influencer relationships and all of that that's needed to perform well on TikTok.
Definitely. And you can see that also play out, when you're looking at, so also for background, some of the various sources that we used for understanding, excuse me, the sales that were happening on TikTok, Callow Data and Fastmoss were some of our, some of the sites that we used and partnered with on this to kind of see what was happening. They're basically, think of like Google Analytics, but for TikTok. That's essentially what they're like. And to see, that some of the top brands in terms of sales or in terms of growth rate totals. So what I put here on the slide, there's some brands that we know very well. Mary Ruth's Goalie is one of the top brands on there as well. I think most people know who Goalie is. And then there's some of these newer brands that people aren't really too familiar with, like Catacore. Nello might be a little bit of a different story. I think it's still in that emerging category. But it's starting to become a little more mainstream. And then, of course, O Positive is quite popular, and they're also on TikTok. And then, so it's just interesting to see the different types of brands that are choosing to put their strategy on there. And then, of course, Bloom, they really went viral on TikTok and they started with a greens powder and now they're in, beverages and energy drinks and colostrum and creatine. And it's really cool to see brands start here. And they really did start with going viral. So,
Yeah, yeah, and some of them had interesting trajectories along the way. I mean, I think TikTok has really been offered an opportunity as a platform, as a venue for they aren't all new brands, but a lot of these really broke out on TikTok more than they had in other channels. Even Mary Ruth's, to my understanding, yeah, they also have had viral products. They have a hair
mhm.
liquid multivitamin that's shown there that's pretty viral. Beauty being a big concern with younger consumers and on TikTok. Yeah, and then some of these brands have had ups and downs, like Goli, right, was one of the top revenue generating brands, and then ran into some financial issues. Yeah, and like I think their revenue peaked. They were one of the top 10 revenue generating brands, and I believe their revenue peaked in January and then it has went down from there.
Mhm. Yeah, and it's interesting to see, the different months, like you said, who performs,
Right.
really well, and is it seasonally or is it certain strategies?
Mhm.
I think what was interesting when I was looking at it was what type of content, was fueling the
Uh-huh.
sales.
Yeah.
We'll get into that in some of the consumer research that we'll show in a little bit, but it wasn't as much like live it wasn't live feeds, right? So I think I don't know if some of you saw, but in my screen grab there's basically someone who goes live, they have all the products there and you can go on the live stream and purchase the products that they're displaying in their live stream. So in the US, that's on average, it was anywhere from 10 to 20% of a brand's sales were coming from live shopping sales. So it's mostly like more user generated content where, like the girl there with the Lemmy gummies, she's like a brand ambassador of sorts. And she's posting a video about the product. And then that's kind of how they're learning about it. So here in the
Right.
States, it's more about that UGC, I think is what a lot of people call it, user generated content. But in other parts of the world, that's not really necessarily the case.
Yeah, and I think that yeah, TikTok definitely has the largest amount of UGC. I think it's 34 million videos are uploaded to TikTok by users every day,
Wow.
which is yeah, a lot more. The other platforms may have more visits, but the
Mm,
interactivity of TikTok is pretty impressive. Yeah, and it's interesting to me the level of influencer creators too as well. Some are just don't you wouldn't think they'd be influencers. And they'll be in her kitchen and then but they must have some affiliate agreement.
hmm
And then up to doctors and people who had real followings. I mean, there's a mix of people telling their stories, women talking to women in midlife, things like that, what worked for them, and then there is, I think it's really important to have the experts talking, but in general, all the content is short and sweet. You know, you have to have clear benefits. You have to say how it's going to help you, and even the experts are keeping it pretty tight. Um, yeah, so that attention spans these days.
Yeah. Oh, I can tell that the longer I'm on TikTok, I was one of those people I kind of like was really avoiding it in the beginning. I'm like, I don't want to get too addicted to it. I don't know, like there's too much unknown behind it. But admittedly, as I get more and more into it, and then of course I have to do research for this report, so I have to be on it
Yeah,
more, right? That's of
yeah.
course naturally the thinking. And then I just get deeper into it, and then it's my attention span, I can tell throughout other various aspects of my life has gotten a lot shorter, so that's
Yeah.
definitely real.
And health and beauty is one of the biggest categories on
Mhm.
TikTok. So it is a category to watch. There's a lot of opportunity for supplement brands if you do it right, for sure.
Right. Yeah, I believe when we were looking, I think, outside of supplements, like you said, Susan, I'm pretty sure beauty is personal care is the largest category
Yeah,
in terms of sales volume that's happening on TikTok. So totally
right.
an
I
adjacent.
believe it might be the ninth biggest retailer in the US at
Oh,
this point. Yeah,
wow.
I
Interesting.
saw that
Yeah.
somewhere. Not sure, fact check me.
Yeah, yeah. Totally. I have a fact check session later on after this,
But
but
yeah, you mentioned live streaming. I mean, one thing we also thought about when we got into this is social commerce was really born in China. So we talked to an expert at WPIC marketing and technology, Peter McMath, who is deeply involved with launching and deploying brands in Asia and working with all the giant platforms there. Um, and he was really saying that it was eye-opening because we get so siloed, right? But
mm,
in China, all the US and Western content entertainment is blocked, and they also got the internet later, and it's more restricted. So really, when they got it, brands started getting on with shopping and content. And people will watch 4-hour live stream shopping, and there's huge, very influential influencers in China that have massive followings. And, so what he was saying is, it's more mature, the social commerce there, and it's instructive to us, but it's really going to develop differently in the US because we have so many competing things for our attention. And nobody's going to watch a 4-hour live stream. So, yeah, I mean, who knows how much live shopping will be a part of it. It always reminds me of QVC being older, and doesn't appeal to me, but I guess there's an excitement to it. But yeah, just interesting, the way it's gonna pan out remains to be.
yeah. I love what you said about QVC. When I was doing this research, QVC has its own TikTok shop that might not be obvious, but um and it's like one of the top shops
Ah,
on TikTok is QVC. So like they're now marrying their
interesting.
older platform maybe with a newer emerging channel and they're staying on top of it.
Well,
So
they gotta know how to do it. They're the
right,
OGs.
right. Yeah, exactly, exactly. Just got to adjust a little bit their strategy. But yeah, so hopefully this little intro, Susan and I kind of talking about the channel and what's happening kind of gave us a good foundation before we get into some of the NBJ information that's in the report. Just want to give you guys a little bit of understanding of what to expect in this report and to also kind of give you guys some valuable insights. But TikTok for sure is driving both direct and indirect sales and, driving more and more consumers to our industry every day. And so it's definitely one that we want to keep an eye on and see what's happening and see, what relates to other channels or other strategies within certain brands. So to kind of set a foundation, I always say this in these lives, but I like to give us an understanding of what we're talking about and where we're at and to kind of give us that good foundation. So when we look at the whole supplement industry and break it out by channel, can see that about 25% of supplement sales, almost about 1 in 4, are happening on e-commerce. And so within e-commerce is what we track as social commerce. So before, let's say 6 months ago, before 2025, and now in 2026, we actually weren't even tracking social commerce. And now it's like I said, it's a $1 billion industry, just about estimated to be. And so we had to kind of decide also, like Susan said, if we want to make it its own channel or do we put it within e-commerce. And while we decided to define social commerce as native in-app checkout, it might evolve and change even when within this year on what other platforms are doing. Like you said, Pinterest is a small player, but I think they're dabbling with the shopping assistant with ChatGPT or with AI. And so there's going to be so much evolving within this category or within this channel that we just want to leave it open to what we want to decide we want to do, but it definitely falls within e-commerce. So within e-commerce, about 5 to 6% of sales are going to be happening from social commerce, which as we define it now as TikTok. All right, so kind of setting the stage for the market sizing there a little bit. Within the report, we have some more details on, what sales are happening within each category. And so we'll get into that a little bit in the report. But I want to switch over to the consumer survey, talk more about the discoverability and what consumers are looking for, when they go on social media. How does TikTok interact with all of that? And so what's interesting, and this might not be surprising, but when we asked, so let me take a step back. We surveyed two different groups of people for this report. We surveyed those who basically purchased TikTok or supplements on TikTok, and then those who purchased supplements based on social media content. So it didn't have to be TikTok necessarily. So we just wanted to see, what type of social media is influencing certain consumers, even if it's not necessarily TikTok. So what this is basically showing you is different age groups and breaking down when they've bought the supplement that they purchased from social content, what platform did they first see it on? And not surprisingly, these younger consumers are starting on TikTok, and then the older consumers are on Facebook. And I don't know if it's just because I'm not on Facebook as much, but I don't see supplements on Facebook really. So, but that's probably very personalized to what your experience is on the app.
Right, algorithms being
Totally. And
yeah.
I will say that it gets scarier and scarier every month, every year, these algorithms, because I'll do certain research for certain reports and then I'll have all my ads will be based on whatever it is I was looking at.
Here's the
Um,
thing that you
yeah.
Googled. Yeah, that's true. And in face another thing to say about TikTok is I think in the industry it's considered superior at in real time
Mm,
analyzing all sorts of data points and serving up fresh viral content, which is partly why it's so viral friendly because
totally.
its algorithm prefers that content.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. That's interesting. That's a great point. Yeah, and I also heard, saw, read, heard that YouTube was going to maybe be dabbling within this like live feed or like social selling almost,
Right.
because I don't know if anyone else has experienced this. I think it was YouTube that I was on, but like you'll be watching a video on something and then the ad will come up and it's like the video of the ad in the corner and then the QR code to buy whatever product is that
Mm.
they're putting in the ad. And I'm like,
Yeah.
would that count? And it's like how we're defining it, it wouldn't, but that's how you're finding the product is on YouTube. And I call that social media.
Yeah, and when I was researching too, Amazon has had influencers in live, as has
Hmm.
Walmart. I think they had a little
Right.
partnership with TikTok at a certain point. So I think everybody's dipping their toe in.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And who knows, maybe Meta will decide to come back and have some sort of platform. But I mean, it definitely is a driving platform when you're discovering, different types of products and all of that. So on to content. So we basically, asked as well, like what type of content, influenced your decision to buy the supplement. And so as you can see, the authenticity is really what's driving a lot of this. And what people are really drawn to. It's real. It seems like it's real customer experiences. We could get into a little bit of a tangent, but I don't think we have time about like different sponsored content on TikTok where it's like it seems like it's real, but it's actually paid, and then they're getting a kickback on like the certain products that you're talking about. So there's a lot of nuance there, but it's authentic. That's what we like to see, and we want it to feel real. But it's also what's rated at 40% is this expert professional content, like you were saying, Susan. There's some doctors on here that are talking about supplements too.
Yeah, healthcare professionals of all kinds, PTs and nurses, and yeah, I mean, for me, that adds a little more because they tend to be more discriminating and they use different kinds of language. I mean, I do think that when they make someone a brand ambassador, they give them a cheat sheet of talking
Mm,
points which are they want them to stick to. But yeah, I think having a health professional there, and there are like Consumer Lab is on TikTok and talks about
right.
different reports they've done. There are also gatekeepers and quality focused people or debunkers, as you mentioned.
Yeah, and it's we didn't it's kind of hard to ask, what type of content you prefer, so that's kind of what we were trying to get at, is like, is it more of the experts that people like to see, or is it, just real people saying in a conversational way? And I think it's seeming like it's both. It depends on the person, depends on what you're looking for and what the supplement is.
I think there's
If you're
a
wanting more.
survey that men might prefer a little more the science and rather, and women maybe relate more to the personality and the stories.
Yeah, yeah,
Not
totally.
not a
It's
huge
interesting.
difference, but a slight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's interesting when you get at the different, age groups and, gender differences, and sometimes it surprises you on what comes back. But yeah, I hear we talked about, like you said, we talked about this at NBJ Summit last year, and different brands are trying to understand of like, do I have these brand ambassadors of just normal influencers, if you will, or is it more engaging for consumers to see these professionals and experts? And I feel like the answer is both. I don't think it's one or the other, especially if you want to grab the attention of multiple different age groups as well.
Yep, I
Yeah.
agree.
All right, I'm going to go on to the next one. So, as we're kind of going through this journey here, we talked about, where consumers are, capturing this social content. And then we talked about, what type of content is influencing them. And then this is like where they're buying the products, right? So, as you can see, where they bought the product that they saw, it's mostly happening on Amazon. So, this isn't only TikTok shoppers. So overall, more people are seeing a product on social media and then buying it on Amazon. That might not be surprising to some people. Amazon tends to be a pretty big channel for most people, but some people, they like going into a store and seeing it there. But it's like you can see, a physical store was the next highest rated one, and then about 15% said TikTok shop. So it's not as much about, in my opinion, I feel the main driver of this channel is discoverability, education, and an understanding of the different types of products and brands that are out there rather than the shopping platform itself.
Right, definitely, I agree. I mean, for product discovery, I think there's a statistic of 71% of TikTok users have discovered a new health brand. And it's the leading discovery platform for 18 to 25-year-old and women. Um,
Mhm.
of those age. So it's yeah, the and they don't always, this I think is the socially influenced survey where they were, and that was interesting to me with the survey too, because we asked about, did they do research before buying beyond the social reel that they saw. And yeah, like I think only 3% of them didn't do additional research, which was surprising to me. And um, most of them either went to the brand website or Amazon, looked at Amazon reviews, which I thought
Mm,
was interesting. People using that way, even if they didn't buy it on Amazon, they looked at the reviews there. So just interesting people's journey and how they what they use to make a purchasing decision. And the TikTok survey, I believe, showed that more than half of them actually did go ahead and buy it
right,
because
right.
they're just more comfortable. And I feel like we might see that as more
Hmm.
established brands, if more established brands join and more different demographics join TikTok, we might see more people just getting comfortable shopping through the platform.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. Well,
Yeah, and
we'll
I
end
think you had a
here.
question, right?
Yes, yes. I was going to say, we'll address the question right after I go over just this
Okay, good.
last slide. And it's basically, this is just a quick note here, just showing that, the people that were socially influenced basically were already supplement users. So, not necessarily, these platforms are attracting new users. So again, helping with the education and discoverability of other brands, they might already be, a purchaser. But yes, want to go ahead and get to the question. Thank you, Carla. Yes, interested in the types of supplements being sold, multis, omegas. We're actually seeing that a lot of specialty, how we define specialty. So omega 3s, probiotics, fiber. Are taking up a lot of the market share in terms of category sales, and then followed by vitamins and other various categories. And then also meal replacements, they say are prohibited on TikTok, and then so protein powders can get a little murky and muddy the water a little bit. So technically, people aren't allowed to have them on there, but I'm sure brands are still trying to do that. Just like,
Well,
on Amazon, there's different rules and people still try to do it. So,
yeah.
and if wondering if it's sustainable, and I think that's a good thing to end on, Susan. Is it sustainable or is it a roller coaster of it's an up and down type of channel?
Well, I think it's social media is here to stay, and they are gonna be selling things. I absolutely think it'll continue. What it looks like, I'm not sure. What Peter McMath said was humans sell better to humans than brands
Mm,
sell to humans. So I do think just that relational. I also talked to an expert at Nielsen IQ, and she talked about how younger people are being really proactive about their health and especially with their brain and beauty. And also that they're just more trusting and they go to social media for their health information in a lot of cases. So I
yeah.
think it's going to have some legs.
That's a good way to end it. All right, here is another picture of the report. If anyone is interested, feel free to reach out in the chat. I know we have some of our colleagues on there looking out for it. But yeah, thank you guys so much for joining us. This was a really, I mean, I feel like I had to kind of cut us off. It was only 30 minutes. I'm like, oh my gosh, we could keep going. But thank you so much and super happy to have you here, Susan. And thanks for the
Thanks,
conversation.
Erica.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good day.
Oh, and come see us at Expo. Yeah,
Yes,
if
yes.
you're
We'll
there.
have a conversation there as well on TikTok for
Absolutely. We'll
sure.
all be there.
Good plug.
Okay, so long.